Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Really excited to be hosting this panel conversation with some amazing industry leaders, and I think that you're going to enjoy the content of the conversation. So without further ado, can I bring in and get our panel to introduce themselves to us one by one? So Niamh, should we go first with you, since you're the first one on my screen that I can see?
Hi, good morning, everybody, and delighted to be here. I'm Niamh Muldoon, CISO at Fenergo. I have 20 years experience in security, starting off as a graduate and working my way up into the top level, C-suite level. And so I'm delighted to be here. I truly believe in having a diverse and inclusive environment really separates and enable businesses to drive forward.
Brilliant, lovely to have you. Thank you so much. Jeevantika, please join us.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Betty, for hosting us today. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeevantika Lingalwar. I'm a cloud solution architect in Microsoft and also a founder of International Women in Tech Group, which you can find it on LinkedIn. Currently managing a group of more than 3,500 amazing members from all over the world. So thanks again. It's really nice to be here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Brilliant, thank you. And last but not least is Aisling. Please join us.
Thanks, Aaron. Hello, everybody. Looking forward to the conversation. My name is Aisling Curtis. I'm the Commercial Director for Microsoft Ireland. I am very passionate about female leaders advancing through our organizations and across actually industries overall. I very like Niamh, have a real passion for building organizations that are very diverse and inclusive in nature as well. So really looking forward to the conversation today. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. And thank you all for obviously participating, giving up your time for this. So it's something that I'm truly passionate about as well, on making sure that we spread the information and people's journeys, etc., and see what sort of tips and hints that we can give people to also get back involved in technology or progress their careers as well. So what I'd like to do in the first instance is just get a bit of a discussion going about the entry into tech, and just find out a little bit more about you individually with regards to whether you all came from a technology background. Who wants to go first?
I'm happy to start.
Let's go for it then. Okay. Let's go for it.
So my background is more of a business background, economics, and then I did my master's in econometrics and corporate strategy, and then also kind of law background as well beyond that. But actually, I've always had a passion for technology and how technology can enable people and organizations to have an impact, whether it's in society, whether it's in their organizations, etc. So I didn't actually come strictly from a technology background. However, since I've joined a technology company as Microsoft, I've developed a real passion for actual technical learning. So, and that will be one area where I think actually the match of business experience, you don't necessarily need to have a technical background, but actually the diverse backgrounds melting together in the organization actually really helps. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Niamh?
Similar to Aisling there, I love the way she talked about econometrics. I actually wanted to be a fashion designer. I grew up with 4 boys. My parents sent me down to down to St. Dominic's College on the Navan Road, down to the nuns, to put a bit of finesse on me. And throughout my career guidance, they kept saying, "You're very good at maths. You really, fashion isn't for you. You should become an accountant." So I was following down that path, and went to college then to study economics and geography, thinking I was going to be a planner or a teacher. And then I ended up working in MIT in Boston on my J1 visa, where I was testing a pension system for them. And like what Aisling said, technology was always in my family, with my uncle working in IBM. He got us the first computer. So I got the opportunity to do hands-on work with technology. And from that, I came back and did a HTIP in IT. I joined Allied Irish Banks as a Lotus Notes developer. I'm not sure if anybody's old enough to remember Lotus Notes.
Wow.
And then September the 11th happened, followed by Rosnaq defrauding the bank. And I just got so passionate about cybersecurity and wanting a career in it. And back then, there wasn't a career in it. You couldn't study it in Ireland. And I was very fortunate to have a CIO called Marcel McCann, who said he'd sponsor my career in security if that's what I wanted to do. He would back me, and he did. He put a career path together for me, helped me get the qualifications abroad. And look at me, 22 years later, I'm here and also helping people develop their careers in cybersecurity and information security.
Fantastic, brilliant. And Jeevantika, what about your journey?
So I am myself a full technology background from the very beginning. I did my bachelor's in computer science. I did my master's in cloud computing. I did for 1.5 years after my bachelor's, I was through campus recruitment, I was hired in one of the IT company. So that was my first ever job in a technology company as a software developer. So I used to develop applications for Android. But as a young child, technology was not what I always wanted. My dreams kept changing every day. So at some point I wanted to be a pilot, then astronaut, and then singer, and then dancer, and then actress, and so many things. Because my dad had a background of film industry. So before marriage, he was 8 years in film industry in India. And he kind of used to tell when I came in, he started telling us a lot of stories, and I started to get passionate, looking at that life, Bollywood life. Then my dad is a very good singer. And in my school, I used to be an average student, but I used to do a lot of different activities. So I was an athlete, and that's when I decided I want to be a sports person, somewhere I want to be into, go for Olympics or anything like that. But I wasn't very good for Olympics. But still, a lot of things, every other activities. And I used to take part in dramas, dance, and I used to have short hair, like boy cut. So in the drama, I used to get lead actor role because of my short hair. Nobody wanted me as an actress. But I loved that, all the dancing and singing, and I always changed my dreams. But I think at some point, my dad and the competition that was going around after my college. So my dad was like, everybody's engineer in our house. You have to be an engineer. You should go for a computer. That's the future, and that's the thing, blah, blah, blah. So looking at my friends, I stepped into the technology field, and I guess I was the first successful engineer in my family.
Wow, brilliant.
Rest everybody were engineer, but they weren't actually. I'm not being mean here, but yeah. But I was the first successful, completed my engineering in 4 years, and then also so getting a job through campus recruitment was a big deal at that point. Directly companies taking you from your university. So I got the job, and as I said, again, in my engineering, I was average, but because of the confidence that I built up that I can do in technology, even though I was not interested at that point. But slowly when I stepped into the industry, I guess that's where I got all the confidence that I can be better in the technical field. And this is something I am more passionate about,
Fantastic. Most people want to do the other way though, sort of like, start off in something like technology and then want to become famous in singing or dancing. So I applaud you for that. That's brilliant. Well done. And obviously, because you're all super young and everything like that, a lot of the jobs that we have today coming up into the market are new jobs. They're job titles that didn't exist 10, 15, 20 years ago. So there's a lot of reskilling going on. And Niamh, I know that you've got sort of like some thoughts and comments around sort of like, what kind of solution does this provide to a skill shortage that we're facing in today's market right now in getting people to reskill and then diversify those teams as well?
Yeah, so I look at it as a business differentiator. So, having a diverse background, skill set, and experience really separates your business and enables you to move forward at that global level from a cloud computing perspective. And so for women, I think, there's kind of 3 tiers of women that I would have helped with their careers: entry level, people that are midpoint trying to move into leadership, and people trying to come back in after taking career breaks for raising kids. And the common thing is, oh God, I don't have the skill set. But when you actually break it down into people, processes, and technology, everybody has a skill set. It's just a different way of looking at, yes, the technology has changed, but it's still the same interactions, driving a business forward, delivering quality services while balancing cost and risk. That's what it's about. So it's a confidence builder. And as we talked there, I'm thinking to myself, what has really separated us 3 women to be successful is, you know, for me anyway, I was always the try harder. And so I had to try hard and continue to try hard to get a career and move into leadership. So it's given that confidence to women and everybody really, that they can reskill and that they can be successful and reach their career goals.
I think oh, sorry, Aaron.
No, please, no, go for it. Actually, please.
Yeah, I think it's really key that we don't put ourselves into a box either. You know, like whether you're returning to the workforce for whatever reason, or you're actually just in the workforce currently. This aspect where you need to be continuously learning and learning new skills, new ways to develop awarenesses, etc., is absolutely key. And I love the way that Niamh mentions it in terms of it's a differentiator for your business. Because if we can respect diverse perspectives, reverse different skilling levels and experience levels, and actually get people to believe in themselves around that continuous skilling and really believe that they need to continuously learn, whether they're coming back or in the existing workforce. I think that's actually really an important aspect.
I totally agree. And something very key there is about belief. And you know, when you start believing, your confidence grows. So I think that it's having that belief in the first instance, then learning, dedicating yourself to it, and growing your confidence as you go. So Jeevantika, how would you recommend organizations increase the amount of talent coming into the industry?
So I think there are many ways an organization could do, and I still see like the organization doing phenomenal efforts. They're putting phenomenal efforts to increase diverse talents, and you know, not just the big organization, but even the small organization have started this, which is really good to see that young talents, diverse talents are being, you know, taken in consider. So I guess there are many ways having a broader job vacancy, because what I've seen, like this is, I think, the most important one, having a clear and broad job perspectives for the people out there, because most of the job descriptions talk about experiences. I've heard this, you know, somebody said this long time back to me as well, that if you don't give an experience to somebody, how will they have an experience or show an experience? So it's really important to, you know, manage that job description for an organization or the, you know, the hiring committee, because when you look at the job description as a candidate, it really showcases, you start thinking about your own skills, that this job requires 10 years experience and I think I'm not capable of it. And especially women, I'm targeting here women, because I think we as a women have lack of confidence in our skill set and what we can do, right? So which stops us from applying the job. So I think it's a win-win situation on both the ends. So some efforts has to be taken by the organization and some has to be taken by us, so that we make ourselves believe that we can do this job. And the organization needs to form that sort of environment, like a welcoming environment for the candidates, so that they can freely apply for this role, ignoring the experience part and looking more to the skill set. So it does not mean that people having 10 years of experience are more qualified. Of course, they are more experienced, but that does not mean that they are more skilled or more qualified than somebody who is just 2 years in the experience. You never know, they might have those skill set. It's just they don't get a platform to showcase. So I guess this is the first thing an organization can talk about. And, you know, again, as I said, campus recruitment, engaging with the college universities, you know, because there are so many international students coming to college, for example, example, in Ireland, doing their masters, having the technical skills. So having the interaction with universities where they can, talk to the students, explain, make them feel welcome to the culture of the workplace in Ireland or the organization that are, hiring in the technical skills, which make the students and candidates more approachable to the job, because they know they have that perspective that, okay, I think this university or this organization is somewhere I should like to apply. So having that interaction with universities, engaging with colleges, doing some sort of activities for the students and making them believe in themselves, having that confidence is again that matters.
Cool. Thank
And
you.
just,
Sorry,
yeah.
Nia, I know you've got something to say there, but just a point from one of our audience, Paul. He's saying he's fascinated by the different paths on the tech industry that you guys have taken, and he's enjoying hearing the thought process here. But he'd love to hear the panel's thoughts on any practical things that we as tech leaders can do to encourage more women to consider and explore tech careers, even though through career change or through school level grassroots.
Yeah, so from my side, I was just going to say, I totally agree with Jeevantika said there. I would actually take a step back and say, it's your passion. If someone is passionate about it, they can develop the confidence and skill set. And so it's not everyone is suited to academics. So it's programs that are like FIT, where you get to do apprenticeships in technology space and do hands-on. I mean, cybersecurity wasn't a subject you could study, or technology at school when I was there. I went all the way to my last year in college before I got hands-on experience with technology, really. And that's what drove my passion. But when I moved into the workplace is where I got to practice it for the first time. So I think it's exploring that, the passion, and giving the hands-on experience to really bring it to life for people. And so more programs and more experiences that we can offer people where they can develop their passion will really help us drive organizations and businesses forward.
I think that there are a number of programs for reskilling that are available, like, Step into Tech, etc. There are, I suppose, experiential opportunities that we can try and ensure that our secondary school and primary school students, girls, start getting access to. So, like, for example, our Dream Space in Microsoft, like, we've done 80,000 students through that over the last number of years. And the reason that we do that is to inspire them to start building a career, opening their minds, and they not necessarily to become gamers or coders or any of those particular roles, but actually to be open to how technology is changing the face of society and changing the face of our organizations. But to Paul's specific question around, practical things, job descriptions, and Jeevantika and Niamh both mentioned it, they're actually ensuring there's access. And the other thing I'd say is we as women have to stop screening ourselves out.
Yes.
So and I think Jeevantika articulated it really well. In so many instances, a man may take up a job description and they'll be like, I, whether I have all of the experiences and all of the qualifications, and Aaron, I'm sure you can give us loads of stats on this, they will go put themselves forward. But we as women often, as a collective, start screening ourselves out, which we shouldn't do. So really having that belief and going for it and putting ourselves out a little bit more in terms of taking a risk, and doing it in a supportive way, because I love the fact that Paul is asking for tips, practical tips, male advocacy. Like, that's another thing, actually making sure that you're giving access and having a balanced pipeline when there's recruitment. Redesign the job descriptions so that they're more higher level, more generic, and less specific around a 10 years, as you said, Jeevantika, or a 3-year thresholds, etc. So I think there's loads we can do. Even if this conversation is great.
Yeah, and actually, this is something that I've come across on a regular occurrence, and I've got 25 years as a tech recruiter, And I always try and make sure that it's about the individual rather than about a gender or a race or an educational background. But the issue that I find as a recruiter is for the fact that the lack of people coming through from the educational sectors. So, is there more that people can do typically, like the business leaders, maybe government, etc., to get this message of the fact that there is so much more diversity to have in your career, and start pushing people into and understanding what routes technology can create for them as a career path? Because as I said, I try and make sure that my shortlists are absolutely diverse, but I'm limited on what audience I have coming through the chain as well.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that there's, I suppose, actually trying to actively ensure that we are recruiting females into the pipeline. Sorry, I think there's some feedback. I'm not sure if it's just on mine, but actually trying to get people into that pipeline so you have balanced access is going to be really key.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a question from Mercedes. Mercedes is asking, purposely you, Ashley, what advice may you please provide to diverse female talents in order to thrive in traditional male-dominated environments? Great question, actually. Thank you.
Oh, that's a brilliant question. I think we've already touched on one point, which is belief. And that's kind of easy to say, isn't it? You should believe in yourself, but actually it's all these little moments where you're building the confidence, I think that there's an aspect where you're actually building a network, and that's male and female, in terms of the support and the advocacy, because whether you're male or female, you need a pool of advocates and sponsors to help you advance. I think having somebody that's trusted as a mentor that you can bounce ideas off is really beneficial. And the other thing I would often advise people to get is a coach, because it's so different than how a mentor can help you around functional things, but actually a coach can really unpick some of those drivers that affect that confidence or affect the self-esteem, for instance. And I would suggest things like that, but I would also make sure that I'm developing a really strong network of people to advocate and sponsor for myself.
And just to add to that, so from the cybersecurity perspective, I'd always be looking for organizations that set the tone from the top. So somewhere where I'm going to get the support, and that actually extends into diversity and inclusion. And so it's looking at the members of the board, it's looking at the C-suite level, because then you'll get insight into how the culture of the organization is. And there were two reasons why I joined Fenergo, both from a cybersecurity perspective. As their CISO, I know I have the backing, it's security first, how we operate, but also from a diversity and inclusion perspective. And I'm very blessed with my manager, one of the co-founders, Niamh, to me. He is an ideal role model from a diversity and inclusion perspective, but also supporting females reach their career goals. So
yeah. And I think Betty sort of suggested about asking about mentorship and reverse mentorship as well. So what are your thoughts on that, Jeevantika, please?
I think mentorship is really important. Talking about mentorship first, I think every one of us need mentors, even though if you're a top leader or you're starting your career from the beginning. So I think on every step of your journey, you need a mentor who is a role model, who is a coach, as Aisling said, and male advocate is again that she mentioned, which I really like talking about these days, because I think I've heard from Aisling for the first time on male advocacy. And I started to feel it's so important, because we tend, as women, we tend to look for mentors who understand our problem and, who has been going through the same situation. But I feel when you are flexible enough to approach to a mentor who is not a woman, and, that's where you start the compatibility, and that's where you will find an approachable male advocate for you. So it's not just as women, we need to do that, but also the male needs to start building that reputation with each other. So having a male advocate as a female, and same goes for the male, having a female advocate as male. That is very important in mentorship as well, because you hear about diverse perspective. You just don't hear about the same problems that you've been facing or telling to the opposite sex in front of you. So I guess it's so important. I started this coffee chat with Jeevantika, 30 minutes coffee chat with Jeevantika, where I've noticed that people are struggling to find a mentor, because a lot of time they have noticed that they have to pay a certain amount to somebody for a 30 minutes consultation or 40 minutes coffee chat, something like that. So I think a lot of people out there, they cannot afford, because they are students. And I had the same situation, talking on the personal experience, that when I was student, I was looking for a coach or a guide or a mentor, and everywhere I go, every website I checked, it was like, please pay $150 or 150 euros to talk to this certain person for 30 minutes, and you have to be there on blah 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 time and date. And I was like, really barehanded. I had to come back, because I had no 150 euro to spend at that point, where I was doing my part-time job and then paying back the money at home. So that's the reason for starting International Women in Tech again, to have that communication, where people are not seeking out any financial expectations out of anybody to help them. So starting this 30 minutes coffee chat gave me a broad exposure. It's been 2 months now that I'm doing this, and I've already taken more than 100 calls from people all over the world. And it's not just Ireland. I'm getting calls from US, getting calls from Germany. And I see the need that they are so willing to do something, but it's just lack of guidance, lack of coaching, and lack of advice is stopping them. So I'll say that mentoring is so, and so does reverse mentoring, because again, it's a win-win situation where a top leader is seeking some advice from somebody who's really young and new, starting their career, or giving some advice. So for an example, like social media, LinkedIn, that it happens like, people who are late in their age and they are not really aware of social media, the networking side. So they are taking, an exposure from somebody who's new and very well versed with the LinkedIn technology, how to network, how to look for jobs, or, post job as well. So again, reverse mentoring is something where people actually talk about mentoring. They think of introducing people to one another for mutual benefits, or from knowing each other. So in workplace, this is like a norm now, and it is really natural to have these things, and which is working out really well for everybody. You are having that open mind that I can seek help from somebody who is very young to me and who is really new in the industry, but might have exposure to different other technologies, which might be useful for me as a, very well experienced leader. So that's something is, again, reverse mentoring, and having those kind of norms in the organization also helps.
Fantastic. And we've actually got Luciana raising her hand because she would like to ask a question direct. So we're just bringing Luciana in from our audience, and let's make sure that we can hear her first.
Hi everyone. I think I put the question earlier. It's just with regards to like confidence, especially I think mostly with people who, as part of IT, interact with like business or users who you're providing support to, like how you can sort of like, or like practical tips you have for building confidence, or sort of like a trust or relationship with like business or sort of like users of your products. So yeah.
So what I do, and I do with my team every week, is I recognize accomplishments, and they're really good confidence builders, because, we're all dealing with really complex challenges in technology and business, but it's recognizing that you're taking a step forward. I think it was Rocky Balboa said, you have to keep moving forward, and you're going to get knocks. So I take time out on a weekly basis to recognize, what I have achieved this week from a business, technology, and personal perspective, professional perspective. It's also great that I have an open relationship where my manager will give me direct feedback at the time. So what worked well, what could work better, what we'll focus on together. And that's hard to get that trust with a manager and a leader, but it's really important if you can get there quickly. So I'd be at Fenergo probably 120 days right now. So in that new stage, we've already built that trust. And again, I think that's down to you know, when you're going for a role, understanding how the culture of the organization works, but really building to get to a trusted place with the people around you, be it your line manager, your mentor, your co-workers. And I have, throughout my 22 years, my confidence has been rocked at various different stages with bad behaviors, with challenging environments, from a security perspective. And it's just grounding yourself back in those areas. But practical tips is to build that trusted relationship with the people around you and recognize what you're doing well. It's really important from a confidence perspective.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And we've talked about obviously attracting people into the technology sector. What about retention? Aisling, can you give us some thoughts and some tips on how we can also retain talent, certainly female talent within the tech sector?
I think a key aspect of it, actually, Niamh hit on it there in terms of recognition. That's really key for people to feel as though they're connected to a purpose, like a wider vision that they're working towards, and that they feel as though they can develop their careers as part of the role that they're doing, that it actually makes use of their skill sets, and that they have an opportunity to develop, whether it's from a personal development, technical development point of view, functional, etc., but that they're actually getting a stretch and getting flexibility and support to do that stretch, because that's a really key aspect. You know, I love to see when people are putting themselves forward and asking for like a stretch project or to move into a different area where they're developing their mindset and developing their skill sets, but they also need the support to do that. And I think it's when, you know, you have a knock or you have an issue that comes up that you don't really know the answer. You need support to figure it out, and to help you build the resilience to be able to do that. And I think that's what really retains people, because they feel they have a career development opportunity. They feel like they have a personal development, and they also feel as though they're in a supportive environment. They're connected to their purpose, and then also that they are actually feeling their diverse views are valued. And I think it was Betty who said, actually, in one of our discussions previously, the difference between being invited and being really welcomed into an environment is huge, right? So, and I think that plays very much into the tone of the environment that we have to create, and that we as employees need to demand, actually, in terms of the retention.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeevantika, you look like you've got something that you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, I just wanted, since Aisling mentioned these things about, you know, welcoming records and recognition. So I just have like something to, you know, add to that as on personal experience basis, you know, working. So I've joined Microsoft very new, and I'm recent, you know, within a year, and having a very good position, having a lot of loads to do this. But I think it really brings a huge impact when you are being recognized and, you know, appreciated for what you're doing, because it gives another level of confidence, and it builds so much of confidence to do something more and add to what you have been doing. So I totally agree to what Aisling mentioned, really, about having that welcoming, you know, environment from your manager or from your peers or from your colleagues and from yourself as well. You know, I mean, it's like you are welcoming different people as well, different perspectives. So I think that really gives a touch to, or a boost to, the confidence. And just to get back on Luciana's ask on the confidence, I guess just a tip in here that, Luciana, you don't need tip on confidence, because I think not many people would raise their hand and ask questions in the crowd. So I guess you have that confidence already. It's just the belief part that needs to be in you. So I guess every single person has that confidence within to do something more. It's just the touch, again, coming back to the point that Aisling mentioned, that somebody needs to appreciate that. And somebody needs to acknowledge that what you're doing is right, and they need to be supported throughout. And just having that proper guidance would really do a lot of wonders, you know, to yourself and to others as well.
And I think that's a really good point, because Kate in our audience, she's actually made a strong statement here that it's really important to understand what confidence is first. You know, everyone can have a different idea and a different definition on it. So for some, it can be, you know, the courage to speak publicly, or for Kate herself, you know, it's about being knowledgeable on a subject. So it's about really understanding, you know, that those comfort zones and pushing yourself to getting, you know, that confidence to elevate you as an individual as well, isn't it? Catherine has also made a statement here, so I'd just like to read this out to you, and maybe Niamh, you can go first with regards to a response on this. So Catherine states, if you ask 50 Irish transition year girls, I imagine that's a stage of their career, if they're interested in a career in IT, you get an overwhelming no way. She's asked many times, and it's not improving. Even if some of the girls do eventually end up in IT, they lack that technical knowledge that would give them the confidence and a wider skill set. So does anybody on the panel, and we're going to Niamh first, have any understanding on why we have such a bad reputation for that age group?
It's visibility. I think that's the key thing, and so that's why I give back in this space, is to create the future of tomorrow. So girls, just the way our minds are naturally, our makeup is, if they see role models in technology, they're more likely to have a connection with it, that they can go there too. So the more we make it public, we make it norm, it gives them the confidence that they can achieve the same.
Yeah.
And yeah, it does come down to nature and nurture around, you know, from the time you're born. Again, I grew up with 4 boys, so every single opportunity my brothers got, I had the same. And so that was from sporting, career, education. We were just raised that way. And so it's, you know, what are we doing as parents, nurturing that environment for encouraging people to go into technology. I would love, and I do talk at schools around the FIT program, which is the technology apprenticeship programs. And it's great this year that they're part of the college application process. So when you're filling out your CAO form, you can also get the opportunity to apply for tech apprenticeship programs as well. So we are making steps in the right direction, but again, I think it's the visibility aspect in schools around women in technology, how you get to travel the world, how you get to work with amazing people, how you can get to make a difference around people driving businesses forward. And it's a constant message before it begins to sink in.
Thank you. And Aisling, maybe this is something that you can come in on as well, because you know, I think that there's been a theme here about creating mentors, getting the you know, public figures out there throughout tech to represent more women in technology. So some organizations, they struggle with getting more diverse representation within senior management. Surely this is where we've got to start in the first instance, to get more women into leadership roles. Any sort of suggestions on how we could do that?
Yeah, well, so just to close out the previous point, on the transition year age group, the 14 to 16 sort of group, we have actually a fair bit of research that supports that girls at that age, they do screen out themselves from tech and the industry. Role modeling is a key way to address this, as Niamh already said. But the other thing is addressing their confidence, and initiatives like FIT, initiatives like Dream Space, for instance, which is for transition year or for primary and secondary students. Actually opening up that awareness to the tech industry and how it can impact and how it will be throughout every working day, how technology enables, and really inspiring our girls not to screen out. And it is a lot around that confidence, around complex problem solving, the math side of it being a bit harder, them getting a little bit more self-conscious as well. So there's a lot that we need to do in terms of the coaching and the mentoring during those years to make sure that they have access going forward. You then see it in an exec level in the industry as well, management layers. There are many industry organizations like CWIT, Connected Women in Technology, Women in Technology and STEM. There's also 30% Club, who I'm members of those. That's a really good way to help advance the conversation and be part of the conversation around access, whether it's job descriptions, whether it's the recruitment process that you're conducting as a male or a female, making sure that it is balanced, and that you're actually reaching out into the women's networks. So if women are not proactively coming to the role, that you're not just saying, okay, well, look, I tried, we advertised it, actually actively seeking some balance into the pipeline for recruitment. That alone will make a huge difference. I've seen it in our company ourselves, where people just weren't aware the importance of that balance and access availability to women. And that does really make a difference, because what you find is that when women start interviewing, they are successful. They're more successful than if they don't apply for the job and don't interview for the job. If they do, of course, they're in with a chance in terms of succeeding. And what you also see is a much bigger impact in a lot of the better balance reports around productivity, around inclusiveness. There's like a business case, which is much greater, like over 25% impact in terms of the top line revenue, the productivity levels, and then, as I say, the inclusivity. So it's a full business case as to why we should be taking this really, really seriously.
Yeah, thank you. Jeevantika, is there anything that you'd like to add at all to that?
Sorry, Aisling has something else to...
No. I think it was Niamh was going to jump in there, I think.
Just, yeah, the European, the board, the guidelines that are gone into the governments at the European level are for more women representation at the board level. So unless organizations start to invest in that now, they're not going to be able to fulfill those requirements in the future.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Jeevantika, anything else you'd like to add?
I agree to each and every point that Niamh and Aisling mentioned, and giving a live example. So since I'm having this group, International Women in Tech, I've seen a lot of recruitment agencies reaching out to me to post about the job openings in terms of diversity inclusion, having more women in tech, having that 50-50 quality, the balanced team in the workplace. So I think starting from there is, again, it's not just you are putting the efforts, but what else are you doing to achieve those targets? And then then people reaching out to these kind of, because there are so many women in tech groups outside, you'll find it on LinkedIn, and that's the best place to approach. And you'll see so many events happening. So just having, as an organization or a recruitment agency or a hiring manager, just approaching those teams, approaching those committees, and bringing the value out there about what you're looking for, and you're open. So just openness and willingness to welcome people, again coming back to the same thing. So I think that is, again, very important. I don't think people are taking the phrase seriously. Age is just a number. So if they start taking this serious, it's not everywhere you have to be biased about age or gender or whatever discrimination you're putting on, and just focus on the talent and skills that people are there to offer to your organization, to bring success to the organization. So having that openness in your mental ability to prove out there that you are there for them, to welcome them, even though they have the age, whatever gap that they are facing it. So I think just the skill sets, that those are very important for recruiters nowadays, that they should actually focus on while hiring outside, and not the age, again, as a number. So they should just forget about age. But again, bringing that awareness in the society of women in tech and putting this phase outside that, it's not important that what we are looking for. The thing is that is important, that we make you feel welcome in our organization, and we want you to contribute in the success of our organization. So coming back to the same whole thing, I guess that is very important as well.
Cool, thank you. And I want to move on to talking about career advice, but before I do, I just want to ask just a quick answer from each of you, really. That do you think that with regards to COVID and the lockdown and the new way of remote working and hybrid, do you think that's actually had a detrimental effect with regards to women in tech? Because it's almost like, well, you're the mums, so you can stay at home with the kids because your job can allow that. It's noise that I'm hearing and seeing, and some people are saying that it's pushed women in careers back by about 5 to 6 years. Do you have any comments to say on that at all?
So I would totally disagree with that. I think it's down to the culture of the organization. So prior to COVID, my mother actually got cancer, and I needed to work from home to be able to get her to her treatments and also be there for my son and do my job. And I was fortunate enough to work for an organization that had the right culture. And actually my career has excelled, and now I'm operating as a C-suite member in Fenergo, where I have that same flexibility. So that's my thing. I disagree. Brilliant. I think it's down to the culture of the organization.
Thank you, Niamh. Aisling, what about you? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm in kind of two minds on the answer of that one. I fully agree with Niamh in terms of the organizational culture is absolutely critical. The tone around flexibility and support during the whole of the last couple of years has been there for male and female. One thing I would say is that it is very well documented in a lot of our newspapers and journals, etc., over the last 2 years, that it has been a negative impact to a lot of primary carers of whether it's children in the home or parents, extended family members, etc. So I'm in two minds, because I see the flexibility, I feel the flexibility.
Yeah.
I also acknowledge actually there's a lot of women who have been negatively impacted, and maybe disproportionately impacted because they had to juggle the homeschooling as a general sense. So I'm in two minds about it, to be honest, in terms of how I would place it, because I do feel the flexibility in my organization, but I also acknowledge that there's a lot of narrative around it in terms of the impact on women.
Brilliant. And Jeevantika, very quickly, if I could have your thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, so I totally agree on both the points that have been put, but I think my perspective is totally different, and looking at people, hearing from people. So I am not a mother yet, but I guess I've seen a lot of women out there struggling, and a lot of them have had to lose their job as well because they were not able to take care of the family. So I think the burden somewhere in the society, again, we talk about the unconscious bias in here. So somewhere within the organization, it's having this perspective that now the COVID is here, everybody has to stay home. And where you are a parent without any extended family, you have no one, it's just two of you, the husband, wife, and the child. And it gets difficult to take care because you're staying home, the husband needs to work, the wife needs to work, child cannot go to the caretaker or whatever creche they said, and you get the whole burden as a woman to look after both of them. So somewhere the organization also plays a vital role in here, because they need to make themselves feel flexible because of the work pressure that they're having. But instead, I think the norm is where organization have that unconscious bias at some point, that since she's a mother, she has to take care of a lot of things. So it's like, I don't think she'll be managed to do this project because of the workload, the work pressure there is. And I think it's better to give this to somebody, you know, like a male counterpart or who's not managing this thing. So I guess this has brought a lot of negative impact to the female women, to the women in tech society who are working, who are leaders as well, and which had forced a lot of women to back out from the job or leave the job. So this is like a live example I've given, because I've seen a lot of women doing this, leaving the job, going back to their mothers or, you know, grandparents to at least give some time to the children or have a break, remove the, you know, negative energy around, and probably at some point transition back again to the tech field.
And I think that was summed up beautifully. It's the unconscious bias, and I think just to make people more aware of that, then it could have that impact on females as well as the males with regards to the industry. So moving on to our last point then, career advice. I always love this section of our panel discussion. So what general advice would you share with candidates in progressing their careers? And also, what advice would you give to leaders who are trying to improve the gender balance in the organization? Can we go to Niamh first, please?
So the career advice, yeah, we've touched on it through all of what Aisling and Jeevantika have said around, you know, having objectives, a career plan, a mentor. I think the differentiator in your current role is to find a sponsor. And what's the difference between a mentor and a sponsor? The sponsor is a person who's willing to go and put their own career on the line for you to make sure that you get those opportunities to help you skill up in your role. I think there's 3 levels to have a career path defined for. So your entry, your midpoint, when you're moving from moving more into management and leadership roles, and then when you're in leadership roles to the next level, to the C-suite. And it's important to phase it out that way and to have career development plans associated with each, where you'll have mentors, sponsors, and opportunities with technical and business development to help you make that move. And there's no set time frame for every single individual. It's different. But if you don't put it out and you don't own it and you put a plan around it, it's going to be very hard to get there.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Aisling, please.
No, I would really agree. You need to be purposeful about what you want. And I think that extends really to the next couple of roles. I think a lot of people kind of plan for what they're doing currently and maybe a bit of development around the existing situation. They might have an idea of what they want to do in the next role, but they haven't actually thought through a path. And sometimes, sure, we don't have the answer to that, but we might have an idea of the direction. And then you're talking about a trajectory, you know, where you're building steps towards something. So I think being really purposeful about a path rather than what's just in front of you is important. I think Niamh touched on it as well in terms of sponsors and mentors are absolutely critical. And then the last thing that I would say is, you know, if you are suffering from imposter syndrome, from confidence, from a lack of belief, like meet it head on in terms of an actual plan around pushing yourself out of the comfort zone with support. So whether you need a coach, whether you need to articulate it with your manager or a trusted person in the organization, around kind of like projects to stretch you, or different trainings that will broaden what you're doing, so that you're actually broadening the mindset instead of actually focusing in only on the functions, but actually develop personally from a personal development point of view. Because I think Niamh's used the word differentiator, career differentiator a couple of times in the session. I think it's a good way of looking at it. You know, be really purposeful about that development, that blocker that's stopping you take a step forward. And if you need a coach, if you need trusted support, get it, you know, ask for it. Not many people will say no.
No, absolutely. And Jeevantika, we've got about 60 seconds left on our broadcast. So anything else to add to that at all?
Very strong advice is to be fearless, have the confidence, and be approachable, I guess. So I always say this motto to everybody, that don't fear of losing, fear not trying. Because if you just don't go for it or just don't try for it, you won't really taste the feel of success or failure. So failure is good. It's really good to give some lessons, have some learning, and you don't have to be shameful of talking of your fear or your failures to people, because this gives learning to a lot of people out there. And I always love talking about my failure. It's not that I purposely fail, but it happens. It's life, and each one of us has freedom of speech. So I think we should not keep ourselves restricted about not talking. You have to speak it, because life is really, you get it once, you won't get the time again. So I guess keeping time as money is so important, that you have to make sure that whatever time you get, you make useful of it each and every seconds, so that you don't regret it later. And to not regret it later, it's really important to speak up and build that confidence in you that you can do it, even though at some point you feel that this is not something that you might be able to do it. But there are a lot of people to support you, mentors, sponsors, as Niamh and Ashley mentioned. So have them, and whatever you tell your minds, it listens to it. So feed honesty, feed truth, feed faith, and feed love, so that your mind believes in all of these things. And I would say, don't ever feed negative impacts to your mind, so that it will start creating negativity around you. Always bet on optimism. And again, just work towards confidence and being fearless.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all of your participation in all of this. And something that was really clear and shouting out that each of you mentioned here is about getting that mentorship, getting that sponsorship. If anybody listening to this from the audience, if they could reach out to you directly, would you welcome that? If there's something there that you could help somebody with on LinkedIn, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no problem.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your participation. I've absolutely loved hosting this session with you. It's been really interesting. We've had some great audience participation as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.